So hello everybody, welcome. My name is Helma DeVries Jordan. I am the advisor of the Pride Alliance, co-advisor of the Pride Alliance along with Josie Rush. And I'm also chair of the Division of Behavioral and Social Sciences. So I'm an out faculty member. I identify as a lesbian and a political scientist who studies LGBTQ and marriage equality social movements. So this is my 11th Coming Out for Equality convocation here at Pitt Bradford, and it's the 13th one that's been held consecutively on this campus in celebration of National Coming Out Day. I just wanted to reflect on the fact that in the last 3 years, we've seen an onslaught of bills, especially targeting the transgender community. Since 2021, over 250 bills that have been introduced in the US that restrict gender-affirming medical care for trans people. And this year, the push to pass such legislation has accelerated since the beginning of the year. In some states, there have been bills introduced to limit the ability to update gender information on IDs and records and to prohibit transgender people from using public facilities consistent with their gender identity. And equally of concern are bills that authorize censorship in classroom instruction and discussion of sexuality and gender identity in schools, and bills that ban books that center LGBTQ+ stories and authors. And so this growing push for the Don't Say Gay bills, the censorship, is very concerning. So this is also an issue that's become a wedge issue in the 2024 election, especially in debates amongst the candidates running for the Republican primary. But I think it's important also to think about the fact that people raise their voices about these issues and to address the fact that these issues do not have to be partisan in the way that they have become in our country. They don't have to be partisan. We see that in other countries where these issues have become issues that people have found consensus on in a bipartisan way amongst conservatives and liberals alike. For example, here in the US, in 2019, a survey found that 36% of Republican conservatives, 59% of Republican moderates and liberals, 64% of Democratic conservatives and moderates, and 88% of Democratic liberals all supported same-sex marriage. And the trend over time has been increasing support amongst each of those four political groups. So there are possibilities for consensus, for finding compromise across party lines that is not being reflected in the polarized political discussions of our presidential election. And the only way that's going to change is if ordinary people start talking about these issues and raising awareness about the broad public support for a lot of these issues and sort of challenge the way they're being used as wedge issues, we see that there have been a lot of countries to support these policy issues in bipartisan ways with votes of legislators having votes of conscience, not along party lines, but along their integrity as individuals supporting these issues. So on this National Coming Out Day, I want to remind everyone that with this 2024 election cycle, it's important to engage others, to talk about these issues. Even if we don't necessarily agree with other people, we have to at least engage in discussion. This polarized environment we have does not have to maintain the norm. I think that's important. So also it's important to register to vote and exercise our right to vote. I also want to reflect on the fact that for Coming Out Day, it's always important to remember that everybody comes out at different times of their life. There's still people in the closet, even in their 80s sometimes, hopefully that's changing more and more, but there's no one right time to come out. It's important not to out other people, to give them the right to out themselves to whomever they want to out themselves to. They may be out to some people and not out to others, and I always remind people about that. And it's really important also to show our support. This is the first time my mom has been here for National Coming Out Day, and I appreciate that. So, okay. So without further ado, we have a nice slate of speakers today. So we're going to have our speakers, and at the end, we're going to meet by the doors and take some pictures. You don't have to be part of the picture if you don't want to, but we'll be doing that at the end. So first, it's my honor to introduce Dean Davila, who's our Dean of Student Affairs, who's going to be our first speaker.
Thank you, Helma. Normally I can get up in front of a crowd and talk. and have no problem doing so. My statement today is not political, it's personal. In all honesty, it's the first time that I've publicly addressed my personal life in terms of my sexual orientation. And I got to come last year to this very same event, and I felt then I was looking forward to being able to stand here in the future and share my own story. And then Levi came to my office the other day and asked if I would do that, and I was like, oh, great, that moment's here. That being said, I haven't shared this, except with those really close to me in my own life. And so there are things that, I don't know, and I didn't write anything down. So I'm going to be mindful that there are other people coming to talk. But as Helma said, some people don't come out until later in life. And for me, that was just before I turned 30. And so really 5 years ago, this October, I came to a moment in my life when I realized that I couldn't continue to live the way that I was living, and to be able to do my job and what I saw as my calling in life, unless I fully recognized who I was. You see, the way I typically describe it is sometime in high school, I stuck my toe out of the closet, and I experienced, same-sex attraction, and I experienced, sort of in my coming of age, attraction to other men, and I grew up in a household where that would be certainly perfectly okay, but all of the other things that surrounded me in my life, whether that was my faith and my church, or what I felt then was my calling to be a minister, or the messages that I received from other friends, people I considered my friends in high school, and the people that surrounded me, those things I internalized and convinced myself that wasn't who I was created to be or was supposed to be. And so I very quickly sort of pulled my toe back in out of the closet, or out of the freedom of being out of the closet. And I made the decision then that that wasn't at the time, my understanding, that wasn't I wasn't going to choose that life for myself. That worked for a little while. And then I went to college, and I met a man when I was in college, and my first boyfriend, and my boyfriend came home, and everyone knew. I lived with my brother at the time. Everyone knew that I was in a relationship, again, sort of the same thing happened. I became very afraid of how that would impact my life. I was continually given messages that wasn't compatible with who society wanted me to be or who I wanted to be. So I ran from that. I ran from that identity. I buried it. I went to, and many people will come in my office and they'll see my diplomas and go, "Oh, you went to 2 Southern Baptist schools in Texas." And I go, "Yes," and there's a long story associated with that. And just for some context, and many of you are very familiar with this, at the time, I couldn't grow up and marry a man. At the time, there were no mainstream denominations that were accepting of gay clergy. So everything, these things that are big and important to you when you're thinking about your future, I was receiving the messages that that's not who I could be, and that's not the life that I could live. And so I went and I have a degree in religion and pastoral ministry, and I was dead set. I was going to find the perfect pastor's wife, and I was going to live the life that that I thought that society and really my own internalized feelings were telling me I needed to live. And I followed that path for quite some time, and it actually there's an interesting full circle thing that happened, and I ended up going into higher education and working with students, and found that to be really the love of my life, and the joy in my vocation. And in that process, there was always a sense of guilt and regret for me because of the students that I saw, and what they were experiencing as they were wrestling with their own opportunity to sort of find themselves and embrace their true self outside of maybe the confines of the environment that they grew up in. And because I wasn't willing to share who I was, and I wasn't willing to be out and to be a resource and a safe place. And in a lot of sense, I distanced myself in those early years from those students because I didn't want to have to deal with that in my own life. I've worked through a lot of that guilt and grief in therapy, by the way. And I've talked in recent years with some of those students about their experience and mine. And in the meantime, I had gotten married, and I had started working in higher education and continuing along that path. And then in a very full circle moment, the very same school that I went to in my freshman year where I had a boyfriend and saw a glimpse of living my true self, I ended up back there working on my doctorate. And I took a class within their divinity school as sort of an elective within my doctorate, and it was all about spiritual leadership. And I thought I was safe. I was like, oh, this is great. Yes, leading spirit to spirit, relating to people in this deep way. So I'm in there with a lot of Masters of Divinity students and Doctor of Ministry students. And it was an intensive 1-week class in the summer where we were there 8 to 5 every day. Those are fun. And we did a number of things, but one of the first things that happened when I realized I was in for some trouble was that I met the folks who were sitting around me, and one of the pastor sitting to my right, her name is Stephanie. She was a pastor at an American Baptist church in Austin, Texas, and identifies as a lesbian. And I was like, uh-oh. And so we did a lot in that class talking about how we as ministers, and I'm saying ministers as those people who are walking with other people through life and trying to help them in some way or another, and providing guidance, which is a lot of what we do in higher education. We have to go through our own darkness all the way through the center of ourself and come back out the other side before we can walk with other people through theirs. And I remember we did a values assessment, and there was some of our foundational values are comfort and sex and those relationships with other people and physical touch. And I remember raising my hand after doing that assessment and saying, so hypothetically, what would it mean if you were lacking any of these foundational values? and the professor kind of gave me a let's talk after class, and explain that what that means is you've buried those needs, and you have whatever those things are in relation to, you've hidden those away, and you're not paying attention to them. And as that class went on, I found myself more and more unable to speak, and sitting there in that silence and in my own head, realized that there was something that I needed to do. I had to begin being true to who I knew I was created to be and who I am. And so I scribbled down on a piece of paper, "Can you talk after class?" And I slid it over to Stephanie, and we met after class and talked for quite a while. And that started a long process of therapy, and of talking with my family, and sharing the news with people who were very close to me, and taking those steps into what I now would say is a life where I'm free to be who I know that I am, and I'm free to love who I love, and that is not to say that after that everything was rainbows. It wasn't. Hard things are hard, and life in general is hard. Love is hard. Being true to ourselves, regardless of your identity, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, being true to yourself, loving yourself in a world where we get so many contradictory messages is hard. And so I think what I want to say is, if you find yourself in one of those situations, or you find yourself in that situation where you're struggling to love some part of yourself, whether it's your identity, or some choices that you have made, or your ability to be true to who you are, please know that there are people on this campus, in your life, in your family, that are here to love you unconditionally, and to walk with you through whatever darkness you are facing. Because I can tell you that there is freedom in love, and it is one of the greatest gifts that we've ever been given. And so I'd encourage you to find it in yourself, to continue to love yourself, whether you're in the closet or out, whether you are an ally, or walking with people through their darkness. Please, please, please know that there are people all around this campus and in our community that love you and that want to be a part of your story, in finding who you truly are. So, thank you.
Okay, now it's my pleasure to introduce Levi, the president of the Pride Alliance.
Hi, my name is Levi. This is my technically second year of leading the Pride Alliance. I gave a speech, or gave a talk last year. I honestly lost it, so I had to completely rewrite it. I always knew that something was different. I felt more comfortable playing with Pokemon rather than Barbies, Hot Wheels rather than Disney princesses. And some of my best friends when I was younger were boys. It wasn't until middle school when I found out what transgender meant. It was both terrifying and exciting. I never really liked to talk about how I was feeling in fear of how people like my family would react. I suppressed my feelings of being confused about my gender and sexuality until my sophomore year of high school. There was a GSA that I was invited to, and I finally felt comfortable coming out. However, it wasn't until senior year, after a few more years of confusion, that I realized that I was a boy. My school was not very helpful with my transition. When I said that I wanted to change my name, they said that they wouldn't let me because it was too close till the end of the year. Unfortunately, some people whom I used to call my friends found out about me wanting to change my name, and I was cyberbullied. I remember explaining my struggle to my college counselor because I wasn't sure about applying to colleges with a different name, and she said that she was able to change it for the applications. It was a small step, but it meant so much to me. Flashing forward to last year, I finally subtly came out as a trans man to my parents, simply by having my sibling refer to me with just he, him pronouns, and eventually they got the hint. I was fortunate enough to get top surgery in December 2022 and start testosterone around the same time. It was the best decision in my life. Even though I've gotten far in my transition, I'm still affected by the recent attacks on trans lives. There are still people out there who want to see kids who grew up like me not succeed in life. I'm a brother, a grandson, a nephew, a son, a musician, and a future teacher. But first, I am a human.
Thank you, Levi. Okay, now it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Josie Rush, co-advisor of the Pride Alliance.
Hi, folks. I'll cop to being a little nervous, too. Yeah, I also don't share these stories publicly very often, but I'll do my best here. All right, so yeah, my name's Josie. I teach composition here at Bradford, and I want to thank the Pride Alliance for inviting me to speak here today. When I think about coming out, I tend to think about how complicated stories are and who gets to tell them. Coming out stories are complicated for a lot of reasons. Even now at 33, I don't know the origin point for my story. There are probably several. I first told my family I was queer when I was 23. I remember Fox News was on in the background, and I was so distracted by the ironic ambience that I couldn't think of how to answer them when they asked why I hadn't told them sooner. But I also remember having crushes on female friends when I was 13 and feeling something in my stomach clench when professors would have us debate the morality of gay marriage in college classes when we were supposed to be learning about queer theory. I remember telling my wife 3 years ago that I wanted to use she, they pronouns and have top surgery. But when I was a child, I remember dressing up as Batman for 5 years in a row for Halloween and staring longingly at clothes in the boys section as though there was an invisible wall between me and how I wanted to look that I couldn't climb. So you see, it's not just that I don't know how to start, it's that there are so many stories about coming out. Partially because folks have to do it so often. And I think we have to do it so often because in this, the year of our Lord 2023, people are still surprised we exist, or sometimes wish we didn't. The most recent time that I came out was just a few months ago, actually. As I stand here before you with my rainbow bow tie, you might be surprised. But I was making an appointment at the dentist, and I was asked if I was on my husband's insurance. This was actually pretty strenuous coming out because no matter how much I explained, I was on my wife's insurance. The very polite receptionist could not understand how this female-sounding voice possessed a spouse who was not her husband. My wife and I have been married for 8 years. This is a fairly innocuous experience, but it solidified something for me. And I want to address my friends in the LGBTQ plus community here. The closet is something that is done to us. It's something that is forced upon us. And from within that closet, our voices get muffled, our stories get lost. Indeed, sometimes, even from outside the closet, we tell our stories and we're not heard or believed. And then we feel the walls of the closet closing in on us again. But as many stories do, this one keeps going. As more of us share our experiences, as more of us share the myriad ways our identities impact our lives, then we demonstrate our agency, then we demand our right to create meaning, access space, and become who we want to be. And perhaps for me, the most treasured aspect of coming out, of sharing my story, has been the community that I've found with a lot of folks here. The folks who have shared their own stories that have shaped my life. So again, to my friends in the LGBTQ plus community, thank you for your courage in sharing your stories, as complicated and imperfect as they may be. And to my friends who have not shared their stories yet, thank you for your courage in being here today and taking up the space to imagine how your own stories will be told in the future. I can't wait to hear them.